Hello, welcome to another episode of Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, and today we are talking about Chainsaw Man. Uh, we've got two new chapters to talk about. Part two has started, and oh boy, it has started strong. But before we get deep into it, I am Jason Hahn. I'm a writer for ScreenRant.com. I love to write video game news and reviews and previews, but I'm a huge manga fan, so I decided to start the Mega Manga Monday podcast so I could talk about new chapters of mangas I'm excited about. And I've got lots of friends who are also very into these mangas. I have a couple buddies from Screen Rant who happen to write a lot of very good articles related to comics, mangas, all kinds of good stuff. But I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Ben, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm Ben. I'm a comics writer at Screen Rant. So I write about manga, I write about DC and Marvel comics, and I am hyped that Chainsaw Man's back. And there's a lot to talk about in these two chapters, so I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We won't get too deep into it, but I was just really surprised that we didn't get. We've completely started introducing new characters, and anxious to get to characters we already know and love.
I do have a bit of a theory about that, but I won't bring it up now. I'll let Steven introduce himself before we get into that. Because
thoughts.
We'll do half the discussion before Steven's like, oh yeah, and I'm Steven.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm Steven. I write for the comic section, mostly Shonen Jump stuff. But yeah, Chainsaw Man. Let's talk about it.
Introduction done. Chainsaw Man time.
So to that point, I want to bring up a theory that I think will help a lot of people who are like, oh, this is interesting, but like, when's Denji gonna come back? When are we gonna see what Nayuta is doing? All that stuff. I think that Chainsaw Man 2 is not a sequel, but a spin-off. I'm actually writing an article about this as we speak.
I saw it.
What I mean,
awesome.
Yeah, what I mean by this is that, like Fujimoto is setting up Mitaka and her supporting cast. Mitaka has a clear mission, try and find who Chainsaw Man is at this high school. We see next chapter looks like it's just going to focus on Mitaka getting to know her partners in the Devil Hunters Club. Like she's got a fun source of inner conflict, like arguing back and forth with the War Devil. And also her first chapter was very, very similar to the first chapter of the whole series, which set up Denji as the main character for part 1. So I think that we're just, the main character of part 2 is going to be Mitaka, and I think it's going to focus on her and not really, we could maybe, flash over to Denji at one point, but I think it's going to be a lot more powerful when, it's focused on Mitaka the whole time, and then as a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter, she meets Denji or something, and she maybe didn't know that he's Chainsaw Man. But
I was almost expecting Chapter 99 to end that way, and no, not yet.
I actually want to add on to what you're saying. Are you done, Ben? Or
yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. So my whole thing, and I actually wrote, like it's written, but it hasn't been published yet. So the first thing I was writing about is, by making the main focus not on Denji, it creates so first the first part is focused completely on Denji mostly. He's the main character, and where it ends is that we see him becoming this almost mystical character, because we're seeing him on TV, we're seeing all the girls, like, which is like his main dream, like, I love you, marry me, be my boyfriend thing. So like we're seeing him at the height of that type of, how he's being represented, and it was also, interestingly, it was at a point, it came at his lowest point when he almost gave up on being Chainsaw Man, because he had to go against Mikami. And but what's interesting now is by taking him out of this part 2, it's kind of embellishing that whole legendary mystical type of like depiction, because like we don't see him at all. We're just seeing people talking about him. Like we're saying, oh, there's like rumblings. Oh, maybe he's at the school. There's rumors that he might actually be in the Devil Hunters Club, or they're saying like we're seeing the girl who ends up becoming the War Devil, or having the contract with him. Saying like she's eating a Chainsaw Man bun type of thing. So it's like the type of thing where we're seeing people talking about him, but the fact that we're in like the same position as like the regular people, like from the sidelines, like it just makes him into like this kind of like untouchable type of character. So like my whole thing was like, that's a great way of doing it, because we're getting the different perspective. We saw Denji at the top and having him experience that, but now we're seeing it from the sidelines. The only thing is, though, and is that kind of makes it sad, is that, and I'm forgetting names and everything, but one of the things that I was really looking forward to was just like, so at the end, I'm talking too long, I'm sorry. Like the what I was really excited about was, the whole thing at the end of part 1 was that, Denji had to do the hardest thing, which was, kill Makima and eat her, so that he could close the door on that part of his life forever. But then he's being guilt tripped into like getting close with Nayuta, who's, Makima's reincarnated self. And I was like so looking forward to see that side, like seeing him having to relive that trauma. He's already struggling with the fact that he's moving beyond her, but now he's being guilt tripped into caring. And even like I remember like Pochita was saying, like, you need to care for her, you need to hug her, because she didn't have that growing up. And it's like having to relive that hell, and the fact that we're kind of like skipping time is we're kind of missing that. But that's my only thing.
Well, yeah, I will say,
very curious.
Go.
I was just gonna say, very curious to see how much time has passed since the ending of part 1 and part 2, because part 1 definitely saw Denji like, all right, I'm excited to go to school, and this definitely feels like it's, especially with chapter 1, like we're kind of already well into the school year. But it'll be interesting to see if this is the same year, or if Denji has had some more time. But kind of what Steven was going into is just like, I'm incredibly excited to see how the dynamic has evolved between Denji and his new adoptive daughter, the control devil herself.
Yeah, and I think everyone, I also really want to see Denji and Naita's interactions and stuff, even though I don't think it would be as traumatic as Steven thinks. Because
really?
I mean, the way I interpret it is like, Denji does love Makima. Like, he says at the end, like, yeah, I killed her, I ate her, she was terrible to me, I still love her. And Nayuta has a chance to love her in a non-sexual way, but to love her in a more, like, pure way, like brother love, fatherly love, and also to sort of, help her in a way that he was never helped. And also to like fill the hole that like Power left, because Power was basically his sister, and by the end of part 1, before the real avalanche started happening and everything went crazy, he was caring for her. Like she was at the point where he had to like bathe her and really just take care of her incredibly well. And I feel like Naita's going to fill that role for him. And I don't think he'll find that traumatic. I think he'll find that he'll find that healing in a way.
I think something Denji's always wanted was like connection, because he grew up without it. And that was kind of the sad thing about his whole character, is like he had somehow gotten to that point of his life without like anybody caring for him, and he at that point was so like messed up in the head that he was hadn't experienced anything. It was just like a weird way that Fujimoto, that's the writer's name, right?
Yeah, Fujimoto.
Fujimoto. Yeah, it was just an odd way to create a character who is essentially a blank slate. And then we sort of grow up with him throughout the series, where he's just like, you know what, I think I want to touch some boobs, and we're like, yeah, I sympathize with this guy. But it's just this might change topic, so go ahead, Steven, what'd you have?
Well, it's like, so where I've been coming from, like where I'm viewing that relationship coming out that way, is first, like when he first sees her, he's automatically like, whoa, I haven't read it recently, this is like going back on memory, but that he was completely shocked. And the fact that Pochita had to convince him, like he was basically guilt tripping him into doing this. Like I remember, I'm not comfortable with this. And it was the fact that like, it was like, this is something, because it was coming from Pochita, who's basically the reason why he's alive, and he's going to be able to, he's like this figure that now all these girls want to do stuff with him, which is like one of his biggest things. He just wanted to touch some boobs, exactly. And like he's basically allowing him to live that dream that he wants, so he can't say no to it. And also the fact that she had like kind of like the same experience that he had growing up, like you were saying, like it's like one of those things he couldn't say no to, because she had this horrible childhood just like he did, so that's the only reason why he was doing it. And then like in addition to that, it was like, because also it just came on the heels of just how much Fujimoto has been making him suffer throughout the series. Like like in the first part, something that's always stayed with me, or two things, so many things have stayed with me because Fujimoto is amazing, is that whole scene. And I originally thought it was so random until I started thinking about it, was that whole scene, after Chainsaw Man comes back from, that hell pit, and he goes through like this whole thing where he goes on this date as this completely terrifying figure. It's like, it's kind of like comical, but if you're thinking about it, it's like almost like he's having this coping mechanism where it's like all he wants is to go on dates, to be with a girl, and he is now in this form where his date is terrified of him. People are he's basically making her do this thing, like he's trying to force this type of way of life when he's this horrible, disgusting guy, like with an intestine wrapped around his neck. Like it's kind of like, I will never experience the dream that I want, I'm so far gone, and he's like forcing himself into it. And that's where I'm just in this mindset of seeing like the most powerful moments of Fujimoto putting Denji in these horrible moments, like having like where he's not going to be able to experience the things that he wants, like the movie theater scene, like the way I was seeing it, and I could be like, I bet a lot of people have different interpretations of it, but like when he and Makima go on the date and they're have seen all those movies, and he's looking around and not having the same experience as them, but he and Makima have the same experience for a movie that everyone else hates. And it's like the fact that because he's always scared, like, am I not a human anymore because he's not feeling the same things? And the fact that everyone else, like normal people, are able to connect and have these emotional moments with a movie, that he can't, just cements the fact that he's so far gone. And then also, like, at the time we didn't know that Makima was a devil herself, so then the fact that they're both able to experience a movie that basically every other human doesn't like, they're the only ones in there, and it's a bombshell, like it just puts him in the fact that yes, he is losing his humanity, or he has lost it because he's not experiencing the same things as other people.
Well, yeah, but I feel like all that goes to show that the end of part one was not about Pochita guilt tripping him, but it was really about sort of the way for him to move forward, right? Like, the end of part one is him making a pure connection, him, like, everything coming full circle, right? He loves Makima, even after he killed her and ate her, he still says, you know, I can't stop loving her.
Yeah.
Right? So even, you know, through everything, he still loves Makima, and he loves Naruto as well, I think, by extension.
Yeah.
Well,
we haven't gotten a lot of that yet, and that's what I'm
of course. Which I don't think we're going to get it for a while, unfortunately. But
yeah, if your theory
in that, I went back just to look at the scene where Pochita is like talking to him and saying like, you know, how to, you know, give her lots of hugs and stuff. It does not read like guilt trip at all. It seems like he's more asking like, I don't know how to, you know, make a good world for her. I don't know how to care for her. And Pochita's like, oh, the way you do that is give her lots of hugs. And so it doesn't seem like a guilt trip to me. It seems more like
such a wholesome manga.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like a wholesome ending to this sort of first arc of the manga. It like wraps up everything a lot. And of course we want to see their interaction. But I think this also lends credence to like, I really think part 2 is not going to focus on Denji much at all, because part 1 did wrap up his story pretty well, you know, and there's still loose threads that we can follow in part 2 at different parts. But like in terms of his character journey, like his character journey went like there's not much more to do, and you know we'll probably see more. Will probably happen that will, you know, give him a direction to go in. But right now, you know, I'm fine to focus on Mitaka, who clearly has a lot of growth to go through.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of really good stories do that thing where like a new season starts off and then we follow a new character and it makes it seem like the previous character we've invested so much time on is actually the villain. And we start building up until they finally like meet each other and then they work together towards a common goal or something like that. I'd be interested to see if that's how this goes, but I definitely want to just let listeners know this is our first Chainsaw Man podcast, so we all have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Is there actually one thing I could say? One more thing before
only one.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just like all this stuff is like flowing out.
All right.
It's just like I'm just so happy it's back. So I guess that's a problem with me comparing everything that he's been doing, like even the one shots, like even though to kind of show that I'm probably wrong in this is that I know like Fujimoto, you know, when he stopped Chainsaw Man, you know, he was saying he was taking a hiatus he was putting Chainsaw on hiatus because he didn't want Chainsaw Man to, you know, take over his life, which is so ballsy since he's like at the height of his career, and he's like, I'm putting it on hold. Like, so then he ends up doing these one shots, which is like supposed to be like, you know, cleansing his palate type of thing, and I guess like it just like fuels how I view Chainsaw Man. That like even though they're completely different, and maybe Jason, you might want to cover your ears since I'm going to be talking about Goodbye Area a little bit.
No, it's okay.
But basically, all 3 of those one shots end on a very tragic note for me, at least. That's how I was interpreting them, especially the first one, Look Back, is like the way I saw that. Because when I first read it, I completely got it wrong. When I was going back, I was like, oh, that's what was going on. Like, the way I interpreted it was that, you know, the main character, basically, you know, her friend dies, and then she creates this whole other world where she's imagining a world where like he wouldn't die, and even when she's like, you know, imagining this alternative reality where he lives, she still suffers. Like, so it's like she's not able to escape the pain of him being gone, even though she created this alternate reality for herself. And that's kind of like how I've been viewing like his other one shots as well. And that's why I can't like I don't want to say that Fujimoto is like you know,
well,
depressing and everything. I mean, like that's what just speaks to me, because like I don't want to say like I mean trauma, but like Like I just like see some things because I'm not saying it like to prove myself. Like your reading is probably could be completely 100% correct. It's just like I just connect with that trauma a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, every interpretation of a series is correct in its own way, right?
Yeah.
Like when we read these things, it's the whole death of the author thing, but like beyond that, it's just reading is a very personal experience, and everyone's going to take away what they take away, and so everyone's interpretation is valid. But I sort of view a lot of these things differently, I think. And that's what makes Fujimoto a great artist. But I think I do think that Fujimoto often ends series on a bit of a positive note. Not always, but like you look at Fire Punch, where Fire Punch is the bleakest thing, or one of the bleakest things that I've ever read. And I'm not even recommending that our listeners read Fire Punch if they haven't read it, because you know, I really think the only people who should read Fire Punch are people who want to be Fujimoto completionists and read all his past work, because it is a brutal series. But even that ended on what I think is a bit of a nice note for its characters, or at least its very main characters. Not as nice a note for everyone else. But you know. And if Fujimoto can end a series like that on a bit of an optimistic note for his characters, I don't think necessarily that like all these series are ending in, or one shots, I guess, are ending in a negative way of like, oh, these characters are just going to keep suffering. But even Goodbye Eri, I think Goodbye Eri, like it ended on a very ambiguous note. But I interpret the ending like as a positive note, and look back, you know, it's been a while since I read it, and I do think that had a bit more of a depressing ending. But like, I do think that Fujimoto can write uplifting endings when he wants to, and I do think that I do interpret Part 1 as an optimistic ending for Denji.
And you know, it makes sense too, like. If you're seeing this Part 2 as a spin-off series, it's like if that's the end of the story, not to say he's not going to come in here, but that would make the most sense too. If he's not continuing that story.
It was the typical like shonen ending where, and I think that's why, you know, this fits so well in the categories. Is it was just that optimistic, you know, all right, let's trudge towards the future sort of thing, and I appreciate it even more thanks to him taking that break. Like
just so ballsy. I can't believe it.
I don't know if I could respect the guy anymore. He's fantastic, but I love what you guys are saying about just, you know, different reads and stuff like that, because back to Part 1 when Denji's full Chainsaw Man form goes on that date, the way I read it, because correct me if I'm wrong, but was that after Power sacrificed herself for him?
No, that was
So I forget what
that was after
him
Power
going
died, but like
it was before her death. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because while I was reading that, I had the impression that like Punchinta's devil form Chainsaw Man complete had like pretty much like completely taken over Denji because he needed time to recover mentally and all that stuff, and the Chainsaw Devil like didn't know what it to do, so it's just like, well, I'm gonna do what I think Denji would want to do. I'm gonna go on a date. And
that's a good reading too.
And it just that's why he's just killing everybody who even looks at him wrong, because he doesn't really know how to be a normal person. So he was just doing exactly what he thought Denji's always wanted to do, and he's a good boy. He's a good dog.
Well, actually, to defend what you're saying too is like, because you know he's doing what Denji always wanted to do. He wanted to have the perfect date, and anything that could get in the way of that, since you know he's like being taken over, he just completely obliterates it, which is kind of interesting. I like that too. Yeah. Which is so great because it's never explained. That's what I love about it. Like it's
because
like,
there's like
just,
no words in those chapters, as far as I remember. Maybe a couple like, "Hey, who are you? What's going on here?" or something like that. But
there's plenty of words in the chapters. They just don't come from Denji.
yeah, because he's just like
something.
everyone else is like, "Come on, don't trip. Give him everything perfectly.
Yeah.
don't want to die."
I just interpreted it as, this girl needs to suffer a little bit more. But she's out of the main story. How do we set that up? Oh, here we go. No, I'm kidding. But
well, yeah, everybody else died, so we can't have her just go off scot-free.
Yeah. Even her car died.
Oh yeah, and the car got like
a very popular car.
You see, actually, we were talking about
a
fantastic YouTuber, Totally Not Mark, who's talked about Chainsaw Man before. I'm in his vote, where I was reading Chainsaw Man pretty much after it had already finished. So I just breezed through it and had no idea why a car got like the 7th most popular character in the character pool. and Totally Not Mark brought that up too, and he's had to do a little bit of research, but reading it week to week, that like inspired a whole meme, which we're finally at that point now where we're able to enjoy Chainsaw Man week to week. And Steven, I know in previous discussions you were not a huge fan of chapter 98 on your first reading. And I could see a lot of people, I saw some people, complaining about that on the internet. What, people complain on the internet? Weird.
You're saying Twitter?
Yeah, exactly.
Most toxic place ever.
Yeah. The hate bird.
And I do pander it myself, unfortunately.
But it's just the whole idea of like this author doing the one shots, which are their own contained stories, and chapter 1 definitely for me was great, and I really enjoyed it. It just set up all these new things, but of course it was just the first puzzle piece. It wasn't the whole picture. So I'm very excited for weekly Chainsaw Man, but in that first chapter, I love, especially after rereading it and picking up a lot of the subtle things that he leaves in there. It's like one of our first introductions to this character, she's on the porch looking at the city, and then the class president comes up and she just starts complaining about, we live in a corrupt city, the mayor sucks, he has a DUI, we're all worshipping some devil who kills everything, and it's just weird. And then the thing that ends up turning on her at the end of that chapter is the justice devil.
Yeah.
Which is like, she wants justice because of this corrupt, terrible world. And it's just like... So,
my theory about... I have a theory about the justice devil. And
I love it.
That theory is the justice that the justice devil meted out was against the class president and the teacher.
Yes.
Because at the end of that chapter, the class president... made a contract with the Justice Devil in order to get a kiss with the teacher, right? That's what she said. And then,
the official translation says a little bit more than a kiss.
Well, I read the official translation.
Okay.
And I remember like the Justice Devil saying this because, there's other stuff too. Like she also did it to, get Mitaka out of the picture because the teacher liked Mitaka or whatever. But she said, like, I made a contract in order to, like, get a kiss, and then after the War Devil kills them both, like, their disembodied heads kiss.
Yes.
And there's the sound effect for kissing, and then they blow up. So I feel like that is the justice. Right, the justice is that like these two terrible people got brutally murdered, and yeah, that's it.
No, sorry, go.
Well, at least my reading, just to kind of cap that off, I don't remember her saying she did it for a kiss. I remember her saying getting mad.
Wanted a happy ending. Yeah, she wanted to reach my happy ending with Mr. Tanaka.
Well, the translation I read, I mean, you guys might be, I don't know, trying to sugarcoat it, but this is Chainsaw Man.
She also said that she had sex with the teacher.
Right, that's the only one I remember really remembering. Mitaka, did you know that Mitaka, did you know that the teacher apologized to everybody? Did you know that he likes you even though he's having sex with me? And so, I mean, that kind of instantly makes it so these aren't just two innocent people anymore. Like,
well, then she also says on the next page, I made a contract with the Justice Devil to find out how to reach my happy ending with Mr. Tanaka.
Right. And then,
the thing was, Mitaka said they're a happy ending. So I guess I mixed up the kiss thing with the happy ending thing.
That's cool.
It's fine. It's just, I thought that just added, for me when I was first reading it, that the paneling again is just masterful, and it's one of the coolest panels. I've already seen some amazing fan art animations of when she makes the spinal cord sword and then chops the devil in half, and then it's just like, oh no, Mr. Tanaka, and then the next panel is just smooch, and then it's a happy ending, kablam. It's just it was they made these characters unredeemable with the whole like teacher sleeping with the student sort of thing, and then just it gets it so gruesome, and you're just like, oh my god, this is so brutal, and then he just throws in that hilarious dark humor. It's just what Chainsaw Man is so good for. So I loved the first new chapter back. But then before in the beginning of this conversation, you guys were bringing up, I'll make you vomit nuclear weapons back up. I don't get that line.
Because I just want to say really quick, I mean, you can talk about it, Ben. I just want to give credit because, the first time I heard about it was from one of our other writers who doesn't go on our podcast. Let me just get it. Crap, I'm not getting his full name. He's a Sebastian. He was the one. I first saw him, come up with this, and I was like, oh crap, that's amazing. But now you can talk about it, Ben, since you were.
Yeah. So I didn't notice this at first, and I only really noticed it when I wrote an article about the War Devil and their introduction in the chapter and what their possible motivations might be. But in one of the previous chapters in part 1, when Makima was explaining what Chainsaw Man is and how he eats other devils and erases concepts from existence, she mentions a bunch of bad things like Nazis, and also nuclear weapons. And so people shouldn't know what nuclear weapons are because their existence has been erased. But here the War Devil,
you could still remember, yeah. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Sebastian was saying this in regards to writing an article about it being a weird thing that Makima remembers these names and other devils seem to remember these names after the existence has been wiped out. But for the War Devil to say this means that the War Devil does remember nuclear weapons, which could be related to the fact that they're items of war, and so directly related to what the War Devil does. But the fact that they want Chainsaw Man to vomit the nuclear weapons back up
means that she knows, yeah.
Yeah, she wants nuclear weapons to be back in the world, which makes sense too, because when there are nuclear weapons that countries have access to, that makes war a much scarier prospect. So it could greatly increase the power of the War Devil.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry. I keep on interrupting.
Yeah, it initially seems like she's just saying a cool thing, I'm gonna take Chainsaw Man down. But she's actually saying a statement of purpose that she wants to bring nuclear weapons back into the world.
Yeah, and the first time I read it, I was just the same thing. I was like, is that supposed to be a cool line? It's barely English. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it grammatically, but it's just, I had no idea. That completely gives huge context for the War Devil's overall plan. But to also go back to another thing, Twitter has some uses. It's not full of hateful comments. There's a couple good ones in there, and one of them brought up a great point in part 1 when Makima is explaining, the greater fear devils.
Yes.
I don't remember if that's the official name of them, but we met one or two of them, and some of the
the guardians or the horsemen.
Possibly. It's been a while, but it was definitely one of my favorite moments of the entire first part was when they get dropped into hell. That moment traumatizes Power and changes her for the whole rest of the series too. So it had a huge impact on really the whole story. But Makima was going on and explaining just, the greatest fears that humanity has are the most powerful devils. So like the fear of darkness, we met the darkness devil, and yes, we've got war, famine, and essentially like the horsemen sort of things. So to kind of, with all that being explained, I kind of got to give the counterpoint to Ben, saying like, oh, that could have just been the ending of Chainsaw Man, and that would have been fine, but. We've set up this whole world. We've seen hell. We've seen scarier things, and a scarier thing has shown up. And I love that he showed up as an adorable, somewhat adorable, like owl creature. But but then again, we do it the same thing with Puchita. Like I really want a Puchita plush, which I think are going to be a hot seller after the anime kicks up.
Yeah.
And sorry.
Oh no, you go.
I just want to say, like, so the person who, the comic, Screen Rant writer who brought it up as a pitch in and of itself, Sebastian Bach. Just want to say Baksh. So if you want to see his other writings, check it out.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff.
He's a great writer.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is why I'm so happy that this is a spin-off, that I think that part 2 is going to be a spin-off. Because, as you say, there are big elements of the world that are still undeveloped and that are like very tantalizing that we want to see. But like part 1 felt like an ending to me because Denji's story felt like it wrapped up. Like his character journey felt like it wrapped up. So the best way to marry the best of both worlds there is focus on a completely different character and have that be the main viewpoint of part 2. We can bring back Denji and old characters and stuff as well for like, just to see how they're doing and, clearly to provide a goal to Mikata. But this is really a brilliant move on Fujimoto's part because
completely agree.
Fujimoto, brilliant? What?
Yeah, no, it's shocking. I didn't expect it out of him, but it's just I think that it marries both of our sort of thoughts on the end of part 1, because I read part 1 week to week, and when part 1 ended, I was reading it, and I was like, oh, this is the final chapter, all that stuff. And then I reached the final page and I saw part 2 and I was like, wait, there's going to be a part 2? Because I was like, this ended so well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It could have ended there and, it wouldn't have been... It wouldn't have been like, oh, Berserk's ended, and just like, well, you didn't really end it. It's just not like there. It felt like it could have been a proper ending for sure, but I'm very excited to see this continue on, and yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Like we're setting up a whole nother character that is already likable, and I love. I know, Steven, we won't dive too much into your problems with One Piece, but one thing, Oda, you've helped me kind of appreciate, especially with Fujimoto, is how well he draws so many like reactions, like especially at the beginning of chapter 99, when the War Devil and Mitaka, is it Mitaka? Is that this girl's name?
I'm pretty sure it's Mitaka, but let me double check. I always mix it up between Mikata and Mitaka.
Oh my god! I didn't know if it was me that was doing that.
No, it's like she's a new character, and so it's just
Yeah, I just love some of her, like her pulling her face to just like I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming. And I think one of my favorite panels I'm going to work into the. Oh, okay. One of my favorite panels I'm going to work into the thumbnail is after War Devil asks the guy to be her boyfriend. It's just like that shocked low res panel there, which brings up a point I wanted to bring up. War Devil's power seems incredibly similar to Control Devil's, where and I hope you guys can help organize this a little bit better in my head, because there's definitely some things about part one that I'm still kind of confused about. But with power, or no, not power, love power. Oh my god, I miss her so much. But with Makima, with Makima, it seemed like as soon as somebody said, "Oh, okay, I'll help you," she could use their abilities, or she could possess them.
Yeah, she turned them into like puppets almost. Yeah,
she turned them into her weapons, essentially.
Yeah. Except not like completely contorting them in the disgusting way.
Right.
Yeah. And here it's like, the War Devil does bring up the thing about, I need to like make them mine to turn them into weapons.
Oh, I love that. But, oh my god.
I'm not sure. It's unclear what that means, because
even she doesn't know.
You could interpret it like. Yeah. No. Well, I assume the War Devil themselves like knows what it means, but it's interesting because like in this example, she's talking about like, oh, if Yoshida falls in love with me, then I can make him mine. But I'm pretty sure the class president is not in love with her, and she managed to turn a part of her body into. Or I guess that was after she cut that part off.
Yeah, maybe she cut that part off and it landed in her hand. So I almost wonder if she just has to hold it in her hand and just like, this is mine now.
Yeah, so I guess living people, they might have to be in love with her. That makes sense. Never mind. Yeah. It is interesting. Like when she talks about turning like Yoshida into a weapon. Does she want to just make like a one-and-done weapon out of him, just like with the teacher? Or does she mean like a weapon in other ways? Like could she turn his arm into a bazooka and have him use that like while he's alive?
Oh, I'm sure we'll find out, but it's one of those things I'm sure like it'd be amazing, also super dramatic, if she just turns somebody into like a proximity bomb. Or it's just like... We don't know if they're fully like under her control, but then later on they just explode wherever she needs them to explode. There's so much potential for this ability, and I'm very excited to see it put through its paces.
Yeah, so, and I think like, you go.
No, I mean I was just gonna say like saying that the War Devil actually doesn't know of her own powers as well, because after it's like she's like. Why did you do that type of thing? I have the power to turn what's mine into weapons. She says, if that boy fell for me, it would make him mine. No. So, like, the way I interpreted that was that she almost doesn't know, or the War Devil doesn't know, like, how much. Because, like, she's, like, even that's one of the reasons why she is using Mitaka, is because that's what she's saying. Like, I want you to guide me through this because I don't know anything about the way humans are. So she's like still trying to understand what it is to be human. So that's why she's saying
that would make them brilliant too, because that's war. Like war takes away all the human emotions and how relationships should work, and it's just throwing that all aside to kill the other side because you don't agree, you don't understand. So it's just so much more like context in this war character, like.
And also, if it does turn out to be that like she has to kill people to turn them into weapons, then I think it could also tie into what war is as well, because the way that war uses people is by using their deaths, right? Yeah, like putting them through the grinder, and and so it would make a lot of thematic sense if she has to kill everyone that she uses, unlike the Control Devil, who like she has people under her control as well, but she can only use them while they're living.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
although I guess she did use Riz when and the Katana Man when he was dead, I guess. So I guess you can control dead people as well. But
Well, it's just fascinating too because the whole idea of once Chainsaw Man eats them, then they disappear, or that concept is forgotten.
Yeah.
So, a couple things. A, he had to eat Makima, but she reincarnated before he could eat the body. So,
well, keep in mind that was Denji eating her, not necessarily.
Oh, okay. So they still don't operate as the same entity. They're still two separate entities in the same body.
Well, that's kind of how I viewed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
because people are still talking about Makima too. So yeah.
Right. Well, and that kind of goes into my second point on this issue too. Is like, it would be quite great if Chainsaw Man ate the War Devil, and then the concept of war disappears from the world. But if the concept of control leaves the world, then the world would fall into chaos, I would think.
Like the good side of control. That's a very interesting way. Because, she's using it for negativity, but there is a good reason.
Yeah, the whole power of devils is the fear people have of that concept.
People are also afraid of good control as well. So, I mean, maybe there could be a type of control. Dun, dun, dun. But
hopefully it's being raised by Denji right now.
I mean, I think
too.
I think control being a multifaceted concept like that does mean that Naida can turn out either way, which is what makes it so exciting to see how she turns out under Denji's parentage, siblingage, whatever you call it.
Boy, that guy that guy can barely take care of himself or barely be a human, and he's a dad now.
So one thing I just want to say, because I want to get it out before, so originally, I had some problems with Chapter 98 initially, and actually, it wasn't just because of me thinking of one shots. There was just it was something I had to do to make it work narratively, when giving it a theme. But for me, what I found lacking originally, it was a few things, and it kind of sucks. But what are you gonna do? So something that I thought was really intense was how she ended up having to she created Tanaka into this weapon, tearing his spine out type of deal, and when that happened, I was feeling kind of it could have been more, just because. So even though we now know that there's two separate entities, there's the War Devil can be in control, or Mitaka could be in control. But when I was reading it initially, I was seeing it as she was still kind of the same person but under control, and I was okay, she killed this guy who is a complete creep, and it didn't really resonate with me. If she had made a deep connection with the teacher, and he wasn't this sexual predator doing these, because you don't do that with your students. That's messed up.
Well, yeah, that's a big no.
I mean, that's the thing. It almost made the War Devil into a hero when War Devil shouldn't be. Because if the girl Mitaka had actually had a great connection with her professor, because we were seeing it as that the class president was he made me befriend you, and even though that could have been because he's being weird and trying to get his claws into her, if we saw more of that connection of him actually being nice to her, and then seeing her as the War Devil tear his spine out, it would have been so much more traumatic.
Oh,
and I just saw it as because that's what I wanted. As soon as that happened, I was oh, it just, I don't know, there was something inside me that just this could have been so much more. And it was also because I was already building from an earlier moment. I'm trying to see if I can articulate this well, because I wrote it down and it's easier doing that. But so the whole thing with Bucky too, what got me really excited when that assignment first came up, we're going to raise him and then kill him. Even though the twist was great, the fact that we've been seeing this, just the darkness of human nature in Chainsaw Man. Like again, I'm always latching on to that, and I thought it would have been like, I was like, oh my god, they're gonna form a relationship with Bucky and then still murder the heck out of him, and that would just make humanity look disgusting. But then it's like, oh no, it's kind of like the stereotypical trope of that, because it is a classroom thing that a lot of people do. It's like, oh no, you can't kill it because we're made a connection with it, and that's what I want you to be able to, not view this as an assignment that you have to follow every word, but you kind of lean in more towards humanity, where it's like, we're supposed to kill him, but I don't want to, so I won't. And when that happened, I was like, oh, and of course the whole hook was, because that happened, she was able to suffer, because like she's like, oh, now I understand, like everyone, like maybe I can now be like everyone's friend. And then she ends up tripping and falling on Bucky and killing him, and that ends up having she ends up suffering because of it. But for someone, like, we find out the reason why like that happened. It wasn't because of her, but it was because of the class president. It wasn't that much of an impact because we found out about that from the class president when she had already transformed into a devil. So it's like, oh yeah, she's a horrible person. Like, if we had found out that the class president did that before we knew that she was a horrible person, it would have been so much more impactful. So like, comparing what actually happened to actually seeing the students wanting to kill Bucky despite having that emotional connection, and like it was like a major it was a major letdown for me when I was reading it. And then when that whole thing with Mr. Tanaka becoming a weapon and him not being a good person, it just kind of like, I don't know.
Here's the thing. I think that Bucky is actually going to be very important to the general themes of Part 2, because if you think about the central conflict that we've seen so far, right, is between War Devil and Mitaka balancing out, control of the body and stuff. Mitaka, initially hates all devils, despises them because they killed her parents. And then she finally is like, oh, like, Bucky's a good devil. Like, I guess there is a good devil. And so it's sort of, and also like Bucky shows that like humanity is not all bad and that humanity can get along with devils. And I think like the War Devil is going to have to learn that humanity is not all bad as well. So it's going to be Mitaka, learning to get along with the War Devil, and the War Devil learning to get along with Mitaka, and them finding that balance and realizing.
Yeah, it'll kind of depend if the series follows a Naruto or if it follows a Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah, I mean, it could go many ways, but I think that Bucky is actually, and Bucky's whole story, especially with the class, like, voting to let him live, I think that actually will be majorly significant for, like, themes of this part. So I actually am very fine with it.
It would be very Fujimoto to kind of, like, tell you what this whole part is going to be about in his first chapter.
With a headless talking chicken. Yeah, so that was mine too, and I could be very wrong, and it might not factor into anything at all, but like...
Actually, no, though. You make a really good point, because even though, he's a character that's basically gone in the first chapter, it is very important. Like, that is the first thing we see. And like, it's one of those things where, a lot of times we think of, a story is just happening just because, it's going to resonate with you or just, have some impact. But the fact is, with a lot of writers, it's not just, I'm just going to throw this in to, shock you or something. There's usually a reason for something being introduced. Like, even just like for little mini episodes, which are just episodic, like the one stories in and of themselves, like usually an episode starts and something is introduced almost randomly. It's like, and then the story continues, but then in the middle of that episode, it comes back again, which is like, there's a reason why we're seeing this right now. So that is a very good point, because that is a literary device that a lot of authors use. So
and sometimes we get demons riding on shark people up buildings.
Yeah.
Well, in Fujimoto is great with both of those things. Like
Yeah.
he's both insightful, and then also like in just listen to the song. Sometimes it's like, this is what it is. Like it's not everything is not this deep thing, which is awesome. Like he can do both. Like he understands like there is sometimes literary deepness and ambiguity, and what does this mean? But sometimes things are just what they are.
Yeah, sometimes it's just riding on sharks up buildings.
But so it's great. I mean, I really like that reading as well, Ben, because I mean, it would make sense that he means something because he's the first thing that we see. That's very good.
Yeah. Thematically, I think you nailed it. And to kind of go back to what Steven was talking about with the teacher and stuff like that, I don't know. I kind of feel like if this first chapter was going to be 4 or 5 chapters, we probably could have had more time to build up the girl's relationship with the teacher. But I think it all worked really well here because it kind of made it so this new character that we're being introduced to isn't super unlikable and like scary and twisted at first, because we're going to be spending so much time with them that we need to build up that relationship. If she had just taken them out with without that, showing that they are pieces of shit and stuff like that, then we would have a completely different feeling on this character going in. I don't know. We've seen devils previously in the series kind of turn a new leaf, like with Power. When she was first introduced, she had no problem pretty much sacrificing Denji for her cat. And then by the end of it, she ended up doing everything she absolutely could to help Denji stay alive. And I don't know, War Devil, if War Devil, one of the worst sounding things that could possibly exist, is going to be able to, human beings aren't so bad. Is this what I've been doing to people? I need to stop doing this. I don't see War Devil doing that.
Well, too, and I should probably bring this up in the next Berserk podcast, because it's interesting too. I just didn't bring it up because I wanted to talk about other things. So I will not to go off too much on a tangent, but it's like it seems like with things I tend to go on the more morbid side, because I remember when we were first doing that Berserk conversation, and Andy was saying because he has this view, and I feel like weird talking about him because he's not here. So I bring this in Berserk next time we talk. Like he was saying that Berserk has this theme of Guts wanting to protect things, like that's like very important to him, and that was why Andy was thought it was amazing when he found out from you, Jason, that what he does is he plays that video game because he just loves innocence. And it's just interesting because I view Berserk so differently. It's just, I guess that's just where my mind, I just can't get it out of there. Because I've always seen Berserk as, and I don't know why, because I view Chainsaw Man and Berserk very similarly, just in how the authors are writing, at least to me, what I see from it, is that there actually isn't any redemption in humanity. We just see these horrible things happening to good people, and there's nothing that you can do about it. I just view Berserk and this in a very deterministic light, where there's we don't have control over our own lives, and that things are just going to happen, and life is bad.
Well, I think that I
just can't shake that, because it's just interesting, the way you're talking about Chainsaw Man. It just made me think of how I view Berserk as well, because there's other people who are seeing the light out of it, and I just can't get out of this mindset. We're just seeing the worst of humanity. It's just interesting.
I think part of the great things about Chainsaw Man and Berserk is that they both capture life at its best and worst moments, right? Yeah. And you can interpret the worst moments as things. This is what the author is mainly driving for. It's all about the bleakness. They're setting up the positive moments to just drown the characters in suffering later on, right? But you can also interpret them as the author showing, like, yes, there is bleakness, but there are also these moments of light, and there are these moments of happiness, fulfillment, friendship, things like that, that make life worth living. And I think readers can latch on to whichever side of that they so choose, and I think that's part of why these works are so popular, because people can get these different readings out of them, because it captures the full breadth of human experience.
Love it! What a great quote. Yeah, too, because it's funny. Like, I remember doing a write up on it just because at the time Berserk wasn't doing well on Screen Rant, so I was like trying to find a way, and I connected it to Chainsaw Man. But it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, I actually view Chainsaw Man even bleaker than Berserk. I can get, because it's like that whole thing, that moment, when they're basically tossed into hell, like, there really wasn't, like, from my perspective, there wasn't really a reason for it to happen, except for the fact that later we see Chainsaw Man getting thrust back in there, and despite all the horrendous things that we see, we're able to see him get out. So, like, by showing us what hell was like, and him going in and then coming out victorious, it does show, like, he had an immense amount of power to be able to get out of there. But, like, putting that aside, it's like the only purpose, like, because it was just so random, like, the only purpose was to basically break all of these characters, and, like, basically broke power. And
I don't know, I would disagree. It, like, opened up the whole series. Like, I think it opened up especially part 2.
Well, I think you're both right. I think it opened up the series by breaking the characters.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and one of the most powerful moments, like, I'll get to that really quick, like, because, like, well, at least comparing it to Berserk, was that there was a reason for the eclipse. Like, there was a reason for it, and it was because Griffith needed to sacrifice them to achieve his dream. Like, just seeing that, like, because in that moment when it happened, there was a purpose. There was a reason why everything was going to hell, literally. But then there wasn't in Chainsaw Man. But again, to go to what Ben was just saying, one of the most powerful moments, like, I think it is, like, for me at least, was just how much it broke power. But because and before that, Denji and me, like, she was a horrible person. like when she was always throwing Denji under the bus. Like, she blamed the whole car crash on him, which could have had him be executed.
And she didn't flush her turds.
Yeah, and it was just like, she's a horrible person, and Denji didn't really like her. But then after this thing broke power, like, it was so visceral how he captured it. Like, it was a little realistic, too much, like how much he was affected, but it drew them together, and it made an incredible bond, which kind of goes against what I was saying too. Like, everything's just bleak and crap, because that horrible thing brought these two characters together, and I'm getting goosebumps in this most incredible way. Like, I would never imagine that I would have been, like, care if power went away at that point. But then it brought them together, and it was just like, oh my god, I love Chainsaw Man.
Well, you want to know the interesting thing that I've thought of during this conversation is that a lot of this comes down to tone and the way these stories are told, and also, of course, like, specific plot details, because there's specific plot details that you can bring up with this example that I'm going to give that kind of contradict this. But I think a series that also is excellent at portraying the depths of human cruelty and the bleakness of the human experience is One Piece. And I don't want to turn this into a One Piece discussion. I wanted to bring up. Yeah, I think that I wanted to bring this up because One Piece is a series that, like, it has flashbacks that portray incredibly devastating events, incredibly, like, depressing things, like things that can make you lose faith in people. But there's always an optimism to it in the end when everything gets resolved. And also the art style is less, realistic than Chainsaw Man or Berserk. So I feel like those aspects don't necessarily get as covered. But like these series all excel at showing off both moments of positivity and negativity. And it really is just how they balance them. And I think that all these great series, every great series, I think, shows both the highs and lows of experience. And I think that, and I think that actually Chainsaw Man is sort of the middle ground between Berserk and One Piece, is what I was leading to. Where, like, I think that Berserk generally does lean. I think Berserk's bleak. I mean, I haven't finished or I haven't caught up with Berserk, but from what I've read, I think that Berserk is generally bleaker than Chainsaw Man, and that could change as I read more of it. But
I would agree with that because Berserk takes place in kind of a, I would almost say medieval time frame rather than Chainsaw Man taking place in a more modern world that, we can, through a couple alterations, of course, relate it to our own reality. So we know even when there exists a gun devil that can wipe out thousands of people within seconds, it's just like, oh man, that's terrible. That sucks. All right, well, I still got to go to work today. That's just like, that seems to be the world that Chainsaw Man exists in. So at least you have that to fall back onto to be like, oh, this isn't that bleak, I guess.
And I also think that that Denji is a middle ground between Guts and Luffy as well.
Yes.
Because
I
would say Guts has gone through a lot worse than Denji has.
Yes.
Is a much bleaker character. And Denji has like this positivity to him, despite going through such terrible things and having to do such terrible things. That's very reminiscent of Luffy to me. But
I'm glad
that's great.
I'm glad you said that because that's one of the reasons why I love Denji so much, and also too, like a lot of people, you see people knocking Denji because he's this like high-spirited person, and we do see that. I mean, and something that I loved about him too is that his dream is so down to earth, because usually like shonen heroes, you see like, I want to be, the king of the pirates, or I want to be the wizard king. And he's like, I just want to touch some boobs.
Yeah.
So he seems so lighthearted, but then again, like you're saying, like what's so great about him is that we see him at like really intense moments where it's like I still love that. Like when he's talking to Makima and he's trying to, he opens up towards like, am I still a human type of thing? It's like he like there's times where he's just completely, it's a joke almost. Like he just views life as like, oh, I'm doing this, everything's great. But then he also has these really intense moments where he actually has to deal with these very dark problems. But then he always, bounces back usually, which is like, again, like later when at the lowest time for him in the series almost, when he was going to give up on everything because he couldn't kill Makima. He's like, I give up. But then he sees on TV all these girls being like, I'm you, my boyfriend. He's like, that's it, I'm in. They want to have because like again, he just jumped back and forth, which is very much like Luffy as well. Like because you have these moments where he's just so lighthearted and he's just like so almost brain dead, but then he gets extremely serious about certain things that I'm always, when it happens, and this is coming from someone who's like a big critic of One Piece, like, and then you have moments where he's just like suddenly insanely serious, and it smacks you in the face when it happens, because it's like, oh crap, no, it just kind of throws you off of it. Yeah, and it's and kind of, I don't want to make this into a One Piece discussion like you were saying earlier, Ben, but something like you were saying about One Piece being one of the darkest things, besides Berserk or Chainsaw Man, is like, because like again, like with my how I'm critiquing it, and I kind of have a biased mind on it, but like when those moments happen, because there are incredibly dark moments, I am completely in 100%. Like when we were talking about that scene earlier with the whole crucifixion and everyone laughing, like that. Like, I still think about that scene a lot, and it's one of those things where even people who don't like One Piece, like, there are moments like that are extremely dark that people who like that type of thing, they cannot get infected. Sometimes going in like, yes, I want to hate this, and I hate it, and it's great, but then there's moments like I can't even, like, I just can't be good.
Oh yeah, that's the thing with One Piece is, like, the way it's drawn, the way is presented is one thing, but if you tell somebody like a story beat from that, it's just like, holy crap, that's dark, that's crazy. Like, I was watching another content creator talk about One Piece, and he brought up the smile fruits, and my wife's like, smile fruit, what's that, dude? Does it just make you smile all the time? And I was like, it's really dark, you want me to tell you? She's like,
it makes you smile through everything.
Yeah, I was like, it's kind of a long story, but I'd be happy to tell you. It's super messed up, though. She's like, no, I think I'm good if it's that messed up.
And there's also the arc with the giant children,
Yeah, that for me is the darkest. But yeah, let's stop right now, because I will want to talk about One Piece for a few hours, because we've gone a whole freaking month with no One Piece.
Soon. Don't worry,
soon. Hopefully tomorrow. But yeah, One Punch. We're not One Punching Man. This is Chainsaw Man. See, check out Mega Manga Mondays. I record a lot of podcasts, guys, so please bear with me. But yeah, Chainsaw Man. The next chapter is going to be the big 100. I feel like things are already going so fast and furious with this series. I'm not expecting chapter 100 to be a big milestone chapter, because we're already there. I feel like 98 was, a great introduction to where we're going, and it's just going to turn into a ticking clock of, like, when do we see Denji? Like, anytime there's students on the screen, I'm staring at the screen just like, all right, looking for that unkept hair, but what if he dyes his hair?
I think the big reason why I wanted to bring up that I think this is a spin-off and not a sequel is because I think you might get more enjoyment out of the series if, instead of viewing it as like when's Denji gonna show up? Like, which will be an exciting moment. But, like, instead of viewing it like that, I think it's better to view it like, ooh, I'm excited to see what happens with Mitaka
and I'm sold. I am 100% invested in Mitaka's journey already. But I think that is a very healthy way to look at it, rather than just being like, when's Denji going to show up? This sucks until Denji shows up. Like, it's just totally,
which I think a lot of people are doing.
Really? Bummer.
I do have a question because we haven't, like, talked about chapter 99 yet. So
yeah, what you got?
Something I completely missed until I started seeing things. I'm wondering if you guys saw it, that the guy is Yoshida. Did you guys? Yeah. It went over my head. I didn't even remember who Yoshida was.
Hold on, what?
Okay, yeah,
I totally know what you're talking about, but for audience who don't, what?
Do you want to do it? I mean, I didn't realize it until I was seeing everyone else's comments, so you're probably better to talk about it.
Yeah, so Yoshida was a very minor character that appeared for like 15 panels, I think someone tallied it up. He's basically also he's a high school age kid. He's a demon hunter who has a contract with, like, the octopus devil or the squid devil or something like that.
Yeah.
And he showed up very briefly and became a very popular character for some reason. Almost inexplicably. Excuse me. But I think kind of like Kobeni's car, where it's like, Kobeni's car won a popularity poll or whatever. It's a similar sort of thing, where people just latched onto him because he had a cool design. You see him
because he's hot, man.
Chill. He's also hot.
So this guy you're talking about is the guy that she asked to be her boyfriend?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is a demon hunter, which I'm sure we'll see. He had to have noticed the scars popping up on her face. Well, I mean, maybe that's like a metaphorical thing to show who's in possession of the body. Oh no, wait, no,
He mentions it.
Yeah, he mentions
Yeah, he
that.
noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I did a pitch on it that got accepted. That was basically like she already did her, like the War Devil has already made a massive mistake, and it was possessing Makira in front of this guy who is a devil hunter.
Yeah,
and he had Scar. Like he's going to be watching her now. So yeah.
Yeah, and they're on the same team, the devil hunting team. So it will be interesting to see how that develops. And I'm sure people are losing their minds over Yoshida popping back up. Because I know that like a big thing for part 2, I know that a theory that a lot of people had was, oh, Denji's going to be in high school, Yoshida's high school age, maybe they'll interact. And so now we're getting Yoshida interactions, just not with Denji, but with
Ben,
Mitaka.
I'm so glad we have you here. As a previous weekly reader of Chainsaw Man, you were able to pick up on all these memes, essentially, that people have gravitated towards because, yeah, as somebody who was able to just steamroll through the whole first part, I didn't remember this guy at all. I know I said the opposite thing a couple minutes ago, but I the way they introduced him was definitely like, okay, this guy definitely seems to know something, because he responded so quickly to, yeah, I heard that was a rumor, but I just transferred here, so I don't know much else. It's just like, all right, well, that's something somebody would say if they were here secretly hunting devils. Like, it's just perfectly set up, but for somebody who didn't remember this character at all. So that's awesome.
And he's also, like, you can tell that Fujimoto, like, he didn't say what his name was. Like, it was just like one of those Easter eggs for those really big fans that know, like, that hang on every single word, they catch it. So it's like one of those, like, here you go. And if you get it, awesome.
Right.
It's like, and I didn't make the cut. But just going off of that too, like, what I love about Chainsaw Man and other, like, so, and I've talked about it in other podcast episodes too, and it's another pitch I'm doing that I think the title is, even Chainsaw Man is, focusing heavily on romance and that type of stuff, because like we had one of my biggest things with shonen right now, at least, and it's kind of a big bummer for me, is that a lot of series have been putting romance or rom-com stuff like in the back burner, or they completely ignore it altogether. And
you got very heated in our My Hero talk the other day about that.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like even Chainsaw Man, which is the most, like, pretty much the goriest shonen that we have right now, like, because it's not really, I still don't see it. It's not a shonen to me, but like, like, even that, like, it still, romance is a huge thing, and that just means a lot to me, because like the first part, we had the whole thing with Makima, and it was a huge thing, and now it looks like this whole relationship between Yoshida and Makita, I'm probably saying her name wrong again because I keep on getting all the syllables off, but it's like there is now this whole romance embarrassment thing that's going to be playing a really huge theme going forward. It's like she is stuck with this guy who the War Devil hit on, making it seem like it was her, and now she's going to be all embarrassed about it, which you can see in this last panel, and it's going to be a main thing between these characters. And it's just like, even a bloody massacre of a shonen like Chainsaw Man can do it, any other manga can do it. And it's like,
well, I will say, I think Chainsaw Man does it well. There are some series currently running in Jump that are focusing on romance and not doing it well at all.
Like what?
Earthchild. But,
Earthchild. That's just a big. That was it was just a letdown after the first chapter.
Yeah, well, I will say the latest chapter of Earthchild does leave the series in an interesting place. Not recommending it to people, but it is there is an interesting direction for it to give going forward. So it'll be curious to see how the mangaka deals with that. But yeah, I think that romance definitely has a place in these manga, but like it needs to be done well, and I fear that a lot of mangaka cannot do it well.
Well, it's because I think so many try to focus, or they look at it as romance. Like, oh man, I need to come up with a romance plot. Compared to like how I feel Fujimoto does it, is it's just like it's not really a romance thing. It's just relationships. Like,
Yes.
I'm just writing a story about a bunch of teenagers, and some of them are gonna like each other, and whatever I need to do to get the story to move along, I'm building these relationships as if they're like people. And so many other stories, I'd say even Naruto has that problem where it's just like, okay, we want to focus on cool ninja stuff, and I definitely understand and love the deep themes of Naruto, but Kishimoto didn't have a need to like form love relationships, and the same thing with Oda. He has actually publicly said that I don't have any romance in One Piece because I have so much other story I want to tell and be able to focus on. If you want romance, there's plenty of other stories out there you can read.
I mean, Luffy is freedom sexual, so
that's my
interpretation.
He is asexual, yeah.
And Dragon Ball Z are battle sexual, so
yeah. Now you go. I was just going to make a joke about Naruto's romance.
Oh no, you make the joke.
No, it's not. I was just going to bring up that, like,
joke time.
He might not have focused on romance, but he did that just by destroying Sakura's character.
Oh God, that was I'm still mad about that. but yeah, no, like so. I will say, like, what I don't understand about. I don't want to turn this into a bash, but like, so the one thing, like with One Piece, I would love to see, like, so I guess a lot of people like it about it, but like after every single, they defeat like an island type of thing, and they always have like that, chapter or so of them partying and just having a good time, which is great, but like that would be the perfect time for the characters to actually explore that side of them. And it, because like if you think about it, like there's these people, like, yes, like, because I was actually trying to write a thing about it, and I had to stop because I couldn't find the actual quote from Oda, but it's like that a lot of these characters are more in love with adventure, but it's like they're on the ship together and they're basically always together.
Well,
and like,
I think the big thing is that they're like a family, right? So it would feel like almost incestuous if, like, or at least it would feel that way to me, if like Sanji and Nami got together. I'd feel icky about that.
Really?
And there is, I would say that there has been some romance in One Piece. I think Sanji,
yeah.
I mean,
is a good
It's not
example.
between the main characters really, and it's
But yeah, I think romance between the main characters I would feel very uncomfortable with, because they do feel like a family, and not like a family just by blood. Well, not by blood, but
it's
it would feel weird to me.
Weird brother who's consistently trying to bang everything that is a woman.
Yeah, but in anime, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not brother and sister with someone else. So,
and plus it's a big thing in anime and manga where there's a lot of incestuous stuff. We can't forget that.
Yeah. So I'm fine to not have that in One Piece.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but going back to Chainsaw Man, I love that it's a big part of the stories, because it helps me get more invested in the characters, because it is just natural to love and to have those feelings, and it's when it doesn't happen, I can't get invested as much. The end.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this final panel too that you brought up, Steven.
I'm looking at it now too.
Yeah. It is. We have this third character who just jumped in and just kind of doing the thing that I like to do, is just like, what could be the most interesting thing about this? What if part 2 actually takes place years later, and this is Denji's daughter?
So the one thing that goes against that is that Yoshida is still in high school.
No,
so
all right, disproved my theory there.
But I've also seen some people saying that even though they look completely different. There's some, and I'm trying to see it myself, but some people are saying that they're getting a lot of power vibes from her, which is interesting. Just because when a devil comes back, they are basically a new person, which is
So they don't have to look like Power.
Yeah, but it's just interesting that people got that vibe.
Well, and I feel like that's a loose end that I know I was excited as soon as part 2 happened. I mean, I believe Power's last words were something along the lines of like,
"Yeah, come find me."
Yeah, promise you'll come find me.
Oh God, I love it.
Oh yeah, Power is my favorite part of part 1. And yeah, I mean, I still think that is something that's gotta happen. So.
Well, it would give a reason for Mitaka's crew and Denji to interact beyond just the whole Mitaka wanting to find Denji. So, who knows?
And here's something interesting too. I'm probably just reading into it too much, but the fact that we know, I'm trying to see if I can articulate it. We know that Mitaka's parents were eaten by a devil, and we know that the War Devil has a button from someone from that school. A devil killed by Chainsaw Man was found clutching. Like, I'm seeing like this connection of, they never said, but it's weird because like there's this thing where Mitaka, she's not really a fiend, she's not really a devil, she's more like kind of like a hybrid, like as Denji, so like the rules don't really apply to her as much. But I just find it interesting that we know that her parents were eaten, and she's also saying she found it interesting that only Mr. Takada, her teacher, and the president remembered her name. Now, of course, that could just be because she was ostracized. She was ostracizing herself. She was a social pariah. No one remembered her name. But like, I'm just reading into these things where parents were eaten. No one remembers her name except these two people who are connected to a devil. And we know that someone from that school was eaten, and they had this button. I just think it's kind of interesting. Like, it's kind of very... I'm probably, again, reading it too much into it, but I'm just latching into these things that we know. That it might.
I very much interpreted it as just like her kind of. I assume that more people in the class knew her name as well. She just kind of assumed that like no one did because only the president really talked to her. Mm-hmm. I think that's shown by like by Bucky being like, by saying her name, right? And that was what really like. And Bucky's a devil as well, I guess. So that could go to your argument here, but like.
But like, I could be doing the thing that Fujimoto saying. Just listen to the song.
I interpreted it. Yeah, I think it's that way because also like you see like when she's got Bucky and bring him out, it seems like the class is waiting for her like happily and yeah, I don't know. I feel like. You might be just looking into it.
I agree. You might be looking too into it, but to add another log to that fire, I agree too. Stephen, I agree with you. But to add another, Ben, I agree with you. Stephen, I think you might be looking too much into it. However, to throw an extra log onto that theory, throughout the first chapter, she's consistently struggling with, and in two big moments in that chapter of almost character revelation for her, she's just like, you know what, maybe I was just jealous. I'm jealous of those friends. I'm jealous of that couple making out on the stairs. Maybe I can live a happy life. And then she gets tripped and kills Bucky. And then later on, when she gets turned on and killed, same thing. She's just like, oh wow, class president was just jealous of me. Maybe I wish I could live a little bit longer because it seems like everybody just kind of suffers from jealousy. Maybe she's the jealousy devil.
But I will shoot myself in the foot, though, because I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think it's so... Like, the theory I brought up, I think it's so weak that I didn't make a pitch out of it. So there's probably that's why I'm probably reading in too much. Like I don't think it's that good, but it's just kind of something to think about.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's probably too much. But
one last thing I wanted to bring up too with chapter 99, that it's just how weird society in this manga is adapting to devils, because we have this club of devil hunters, high school students, and they're saying, okay, whoever wants to be in, you have to bring us a dead devil. Some of you will probably die. Most of you will probably die. Like, they don't say any of that, but it's like, why are they okay with sending a bunch of high school students on this dangerous mission? Like, it's so odd.
What I think is funny too is like, because I was reading the comments and one person was like, yeah, how is the school okay with that?
Yeah.
It's like, really? Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah.
Because, I don't see that going well.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, it's we've been talking about it for a while. Any final thoughts on Chainsaw Man latest chapters before we go into plugs and recommendations, guys? Because I pretty much covered everything I felt like I wanted to say.
I would say like there's few, like I'll just say like one pitch I'm working on. Well, it got accepted. That one thing that I did have a problem with part 1, and which seems like part 2 is doing a lot better, is that I always wanted to see more of an interaction between Denji and Pochita. Mm-hmm. And of course it made Pochita much more mysterious, and because like you're saying, it's weird. He's this cute little bundle of joy that you just want to love and squeeze and I want a plushie of him, and I'm not someone who collects things, and I want that. Yeah. But then he's also this terrifying thing, which is also goes back to another thing. Like I think it was in chapter 51, 52, that still hasn't been answered, where the Power was saying she doesn't know why, but the one thing that devils remember right before they die in hell and are about to come back to life is they hear a chainsaw. That's the first thing that they hear. So it's like this thing that, whoa, then what is Chainsaw? Is he like some Grim Reaper or something? Like he's the gatekeeper? And because, since Pochita is now inside Denji, does that mean there's no gatekeeper? Like, what does that mean? But, I mean, besides all that, so it makes it more mysterious that we're not getting that interaction, but we're getting that interaction now between Makita and the War Devil, and that's something that I appreciate about part 2. Because you would actually see the devil or the host interacting with the devil, which we didn't get between Machida and Denji. This is something I do appreciate because I love their relationship so far in these first 2 chapters.
Same. Like when we were getting to the end of chapter or part 1, when I was reading, I was just like, man, we barely got any like time with Puchita, like how popular he is and stuff like that, and the design of his little dog form with the chainsaw coming out of his head. Like, we only get to see that like in the first couple chapters of the series, and then we like never see that again. And coming from a huge Naruto fan, I too would have really loved to get at least some more inner dialogue with Puchita and Denji, but we never really got that.
And also too, like, because I read into something when I was first reading it in too much, because I ended up being completely wrong, but because I wanted that reaction, that awesome moment where we see Denji having like, he sees this door and there's an eye behind the door. It's like, don't open, you don't want to see what's behind here.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that like the type of Kurama thing where like
same is that like a seal?
Yeah, but then it's not. It was like the whole truth behind the whole horrible truth that Makima introduced about his life that's been locked away in his head. So it's like, that's what everyone wants.
Did that get resolved, or is that still...
it could be.
Because I forget.
Probably read it incorrectly, but like, because like later on when Makima introduces the real, like what happened to him growing up, that was what was behind that door was that past that was blocked off, and then he remembered it. That's how I interpreted it, that it wasn't actually Pochita, but that it was his past that had been blocked out of his mind.
Huh. Yeah, I might have to reread part one, but I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if it was that or if it was just like a premonition of what happens to power.
Well, I remember it was so bad when I found out. I'm like, I almost went because I wrote a thing about it, and I remember it being so wrong. It's like I almost want to delete. It's like it's completely wrong now. So yeah, I'll have to read because I just remember when I found out. I'm like, well, that last article I wrote was completely wrong. So I'm gonna, but it's still up there. So if you want to read it and see how wrong it was,
Yeah, I feel like I might have a similar thing if it turns out if like the next chapter is like back to Denji, because I'm writing an article right now about what I said before, where it's like I think this is a spin-off and not a sequel. So
Yeah. Oh man, I
it'd be
feel like
funny if
that,
this
that
was
would
all
be
just
really
a
weird.
prequel and then it focuses back to Denji.
It'd be really weird if it was just a hard pivot from here.
Yeah, it would be very funny though. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure I trust Fujimoto to make it work no matter what happens. But
oh god,
incredibly excited to talk Chainsaw Man Chapter 100 next week.
yeah,
there's so much more we haven't talked about. Like not just about the last thing. Like because no, like
Go
the
on,
whole
go on, man.
Oh man, like no, the whole thing about you know when Aki became the gun fiend, and we had that moment where it became a snowball fight, and how it was actually related to the moment when Aki was. It was when his parents first died, and they were all going to play snowball fight outside, and then the gun devil killed his entire. Because I remember when I was reading it, I was like, why? Why are they playing it? Why are we doing this whole snowball fight thing? And then I went back and was like, holy crap. It was like one of those things where it's like, it's explained, but like he didn't, like there wasn't like a panel that reminds you what he's talking about. You actually either have an awesome memory, which I didn't, or you have to go back and look back to that first flashback when we see him playing with his brother outside. Like I was like,
we should have had a part one discussion before part two came out, just to discuss all the great moments from it.
Oh, I knew that this podcast was going to go long because it is the first podcast of a series that we all really enjoy. So,
double length episode.
Yeah, right.
And then there was also the town mouse and city mouse. Oh, I love that.
Which I'm hoping the first season of the anime ends there, but it will probably end at a different point, unfortunately. But
yeah, they have a lot to cover.
Yeah, because I don't think they're actually going to be able to make it to the hell scene, because usually
no, they're not going to be able to make it to the hell scene. But
yeah, because
I'm hoping they end with Ray's arc.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I mean,
that would be great. That was like the first introduction of, oh man, Makima might not be awesome. It was her dispatch of Riza.
Hints earlier on, but
for sure.
But yeah, that was.
And then there's the whole Halloween thing. Oh my god!
Man, that
another
was
moment that completely shook me to my core.
Yeah,
like, it's like the what that power is and why she says Halloween.
Yeah.
I was, oh my.
Yeah, that whole hell scene, and then that following that, those were definitely my favorite parts. Like anytime somebody referenced something about Chainsaw Man, I just post gifs of Halloween.
Because it's great because it was kind of unfortunate, because it was like during a time when Chainsaw Man wasn't doing well on Screen Rant, so the only way I could write about it was comparing it randomly to other anime, and just like comparing it to I don't even remember the name of it. To Naruto, with Itachi's Genjutsu, where I don't even remember the name of what the Genjutsu is. I don't even know if you're
I can help you. The infinite
where Kakashi is like on that cross and he's like stuck in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's just a Genjutsu. Yeah.
Yeah, Genjutsu, but like comparing it to that, because I was because I want to write about this thing in Chainsaw Man, but I have to compare it to Naruto to be able to write about it, because Naruto. But yeah, it was like it just hits you so much that you'll do anything to be able to write about it. That was the whole thing. It's like, I want to write about this, and if I have to compare it to anime randomly, I will do it because it must happen.
There's definitely some articles I read where it's just like, oh, okay, I wonder how they explain this one, and then it just kind of branches off into something else. Like, oh, okay, they wanted to write about this.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Cause I mean, sometimes there are really good. Sometimes like you can make really these awesome connections.
Of course. Oh yeah, of course.
And then other times it's like, okay, yeah, you can tell that they just want to.
Yeah, I feel that way about superhero comics as well, because occasionally you want to talk about a moment in a comic that's maybe not as popular or something. So you have to tie it into something like, oh, this Arrowverse character did this thing, or like this MCU character did this thing. Where you mentioned you got to tie it into something that people care about in general. But then you talk about the comic pretty much exclusively, which luckily the MCU is incorporating more and more characters, so I can talk about more and more characters.
Yeah.
But actually, like I had to do that recently because I still have to do it, but it's actually going to be good. It's not going to be crappy because I don't like writing crappy articles.
Heard it here, folks.
I mean, I'm with you there.
I just don't like. That's why I don't want to get into because I'm doing other stuff. But I don't want to. Not to bash Screen Rant, not bashing Screen Rant, but like the thing where like you have to write a certain amount of articles per day.
Yeah.
I don't want to get there because I'd never want to write an article just to get a number. Like I want it to be good. I'm not saying that my stuff is good, but I want to. I'm happy about it, and and that's what I'm able to do now. That's the only way I can write about Undead Unluck is by because like I was saying in the last podcast we were doing, like I hope that it gets accepted, and it was. But like, so I'm going to be writing a thing about Undead Unluck about the latest chapter, and I'm able to do it by comparing it to just how powers are used in Shonen Jump overall, and how this newest development in Undead Unluck is adding to this whole flavor of how powers can be a metaphor for deeper things, and they're just using powers as another way to illustrate human emotions or situations that people get into. So again, I'm just talking about what you're going through as well, Ben, that sometimes you have to do these comparisons to write about things you care about.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great segue into plugs, unless any other final thoughts on Chainsaw Man for today. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about next week as well.
Yeah, I think I should stop now because I'm getting too excited.
Well, yeah, you were all excited about the new chapter of Dragon Ball Super, which will...
And I'm so happy because I forgot about it. This conversation has been so good that I completely... because I was actually going to go... because I was looking to a former past chapter in Chainsaw Man, and I went right up to Dragon Ball Super, and it's like, I forgot about it. Cool. So...
Well, I'll go ahead and smooth guy transition into... we'll be recording a Dragon Ball Super podcast, so if that's another series you like to follow, go to Mega Manga Mondays. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Spreaker, a few things. But yeah, if you just Google Mega Manga Mondays or find us on Twitter at Manga Mondays for updates, and feel free to reach out to us and tell us about some major things we missed in some past chapters or something like that. Love to hear from fans. So please check us out and follow us and absorb our content. But I am Jason Hahn. I write video game articles for Screen Rant. Please check out my works and the works of everybody else on Screen Rant, including my friends in the comic sections. Lots of great articles for news and insightful readings. One last thing from me too, I do a YouTube series called Honzy and Friends. I like to stream cool video games. Been playing some Halo, God of War, all kinds of stuff lately. So yeah, definitely check that out. I try to add some humor to some cool video game fun, so please check that out.
And I will say this: there is humor. I do tune into your stuff sometimes,
Thanks,
and
man.
it's actually there's some. I won't get into it too much, but I like your whole thing about what you think about sitcoms. That was what you talked about that a little while ago. I'm like, oh, he's talking about sitcoms. This is gonna be fun. So yeah, so I will definitely say it is funny stuff too as well. It's not just all gaming. So
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Well, Steven, other than Honzy and Friends being the best YouTube channel out there, any other recommendations or plugs, buddy?
Well, I have to say, I still need to. I'm actually going to do it right after or soon. I'm going to start watching Ben's YouTube video because I'm actually because I'm trying to introduce my kids to other stuff. Like, because right now they're really into Pokemon, which is very exciting for me. But I want to and they're really huge into YouTube. That's how they watch a lot of their stuff. So I'm actually going to be showing your YouTube video to to introduce. Well, no, because like it's really cool because like they like these sort of things, especially my older son, and he just likes. And I want to be like, hey, I know this guy in real life, dude.
No, I hope they enjoy it. Just know that the videos are generally very long, so if they've got a short attention span, they might not enjoy the videos that much. But I hope they enjoy them. And I hope it helps them get into the game. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, because I want them to get into. Because I won't get into too much, but yeah, I want to.
What's the channel called?
Yeah, what is the channel?
Should I plug or should it?
Plug.
The channel's called YGO from Zero, and it's basically going through historical formats of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and featuring the decks that are in those formats, featuring some like tips on how to play. Things like that. So it's very fun to make, and I hope it's fun to watch as well, and that it gives some useful tips on playing. So
yeah, I think that sounds really interesting, especially with Yu-Gi-Oh kind of getting popular again with the unfortunate passing of the creator. But this one thing I've heard about the card game compared to the anime is a lot of cards either become illegal or they suck. So I think it'd be really interesting if you like dived into like, okay, well, these are the cards that Yugi used and this is why they suck.
Well, it is interesting because in the formats that I'm currently talking about, a lot of the most powerful cards in them are cards that were used in the anime because it's from a time in the game's history when it was more tied to the anime and manga than it is now.
Awesome.
So it's kind of cool, and it can lead to some very big sort of anime moments. It's very fun, and I talk about a lot of different things on the channel related to that. They're very long videos, so if you're into that as well, definitely check it out.
And also you too, Jason. Like if you're going to play a Sonic game, just let me know, and I'll tune my boys into it. Since they actually watch a lot of people playing video games when it's Sonic. So if you could do a Sonic one, I'll send them their way.
Oh, that could be fun. Because after we went and saw I took my little guy to go see Sonic 2. I was just compelled to. I loved Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 back on the Dreamcast, and so I hooked that up and started playing that again. And I'm also a fan of the Game Grumps, and they finished playing Sonic Generations recently, and they just suck at those games. Like they don't pay attention to the tutorials or anything, so they miss out on like major bits that you're supposed to be doing. And so when they're played properly, the Sonic games can be pretty fun. So we'll see. But any other recommendations or from you, Ben? I think you were finishing up.
Yeah, so I already plugged my YouTube channel, but in terms of recommendations, a book came out recently, I think a week or two ago, called Dread God, which is the 12th, 13th book in the Cradle series, and Cradle is a very fun book series, and it's very anime-esque, it draws a lot of inspiration from like the wuxia genre of like Chinese web novels where like they've got a weak protagonist. It's basically you start out with like a weak protagonist and then they learn a bunch of martial arts and they get incredibly powerful over time. So it's kind of like Dragon Ball in that regard.
Or Hajime no Ippo.
Yeah, and it's a very fun series. And I think it handles power scaling extremely well for like the level of power that it's dealing with. So, like, yes, the characters at this point are strong enough to probably, like, punch planets and destroy them or whatever. But, like, it feels like a very natural progression, and the fights are very interesting and not just, like, punch back and forth or charging up an energy attack or whatever. So it's a very good series, and I think if you enjoy a lot of shonen manga and shonen anime, I think you will enjoy it. And it's a very, very quick reads. You'll start one and you'll just blaze through it because it's just very breakneck pace and fun. So
awesome. And one more time, what was that one called?
Yeah, it's the Cradle series. The first book is Unsold, and the latest book is Dread God. I don't recommend starting at Dread God because you'll be very confused.
Awesome.
But yeah.
All right, and Steven, I know you were bringing up Undead Unluck earlier, so I know you probably want to pitch that one too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I talked about on the last podcast, but just loving that series, and even though it's on Shonen Jump, like you can't really say something is not doing well, even because it gets a lot more exposure that way. But it's just like one of those things that it deserves a lot more attention, just because the mangaka, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I won't try and butcher it, but just really creative and doing things differently. And he still goes and latches on themes that a lot of manga do, but without being cliche about it. So I mean, it's always great, and I hate saying that word, cliche, but just love that stuff. But I also want to use this just to give a shout out to actually someone on Twitter. It happened a while ago, but I want to bring it up now. This guy Rock a Million at Rocco Damien 06, or instead of the O, it's a 0, it's an O, and then a 6. Like, I just want to say, like, I ended up getting in a really good conversation with him, and it's actually made my writing a lot better. Because usually, like, I always want to feel like I'm good with critiques, but sometimes I'm not. And and this is actually about Sonic the Hedgehog. We talked a little bit about, because I'm very until recently, I've always viewed IDW as kind of like a big step down from Archie comics, just because like I grew up with Archie and I view everything that way. And we ended up talking about it, and I realized I was being a little too harsh on IDW earlier, and it actually ended up making a future article I wrote about Sonic much better. And
for some context for listeners, these are two publications that put out Sonic the Hedgehog comics.
Yeah, well, Archie Comics used to, and then went under because of this whole lawsuit thing, which a lot of people talk down on about Ken Penders, even though he had the right to do it because they were his characters. But anyway, but yeah, just saying that even though Twitter can be a toxic place, like if you give it a chance, sometimes you can have really good, meaningful conversations with people, and it can make you into a better writer or better person sometimes. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you, Rock a Million.
You could even say that in the bleakest of places, there is still light and hope.
There you go. Yeah.
Because even in the darkness, there's light.
Yeah.
So it was a Kingdom Hearts line. It just erupted out of me. I'm sorry. But it's been a lot of fun talking Chainsaw Man with you guys. I should probably cut it off here before we mention one more awesome part from the manga and then talk about it for a whole another hour. So look forward to more Chainsaw Man discussions from Mega Manga Monday. And thanks for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll talk next time.
Yeah, see y'all next time.
Peace.